They say some people don't realize what they have until it's gone. But that doesn't mean they're supposed to get it back. Or are they? The reality is that some men are going to leave and come back into your life, or you may have left them and they come back into your life. And the question becomes, what do you do when that happens? Or what should you do? Well, let me break it down for you. And we're going to get right into it, starting with number one. When a man comes back to you, don't react emotionally. All right. So what I've seen happen to so many women is that, again, whether it's you left him, he left you, you guys mutually separated, whatever, he ghosted you, the man tries to pop back up, and initially there's just an emotional reaction. That emotion might take you towards letting him back in because maybe you're lonely, maybe it's just he got you at the right time and you're willing to entertain what he has to say, or it may be in the opposite direction where your emotions take you to F him, how dare he try to come back, I'm not even going to entertain this guy for 1 second. Now, listen, I'm not saying at the moment whether letting him in or keeping him out is correct or not. What I'm saying is your emotions should not dictate that. All right. When the man comes back, you need to take a step back in that moment, in that day, whatever you need to do to make sure you think it out clearly. Now, some of you may say, forget all that. It's not that serious. If he didn't appreciate me the first time around, he needs to stay out of my life. But the reason why I don't want you to go straight to that is because, again, I've seen situations where the emotion said one thing, but when the woman actually took time to process, she was able to see more deeply into the situation to understand what needed to happen. And I'm going to lay some out for you of what may need to happen. So do not react emotionally. Allow yourself to process. Now, if you watch my videos, you know I'm all about intuition, and I'm never going to tell you to ignore your intuition. I just want you to make sure that emotions don't guide you in that moment. So process and properly evaluate the situation. Now, the second thing you should do when a man comes back is make sure you've gotten everything off your chest. Now, again, remember I just said I do not want you reacting emotionally because in some situations, I would argue in most situations, there are things you were not able to let out or you have not let out in regards to this man or what happened, all right? Again, whether it's he hurt you, whether it's you were afraid, whatever the case may be. And if you react emotionally and you shut the door, all right, or even let him back in too fast, without giving yourself a chance to get things off your chest, you're only going to make matters worse. So, and please consider that when I say get things off your chest, I don't mean about that argument that you guys had that one time. I don't mean the lashing out you did when you felt like he disrespected you. I mean an opportunity to really flush everything out. Because one of the struggles that people have, all right, when they detach from somebody is the fact that they're still holding on to emotions or thoughts or feelings that they need to let out. And not letting out those things creates an attachment to the situation, good or bad. And when I say good or bad, whether the situation was good for them or not, it creates an attachment there, which becomes unhealthy. It creates a greater struggle, and it makes it harder for you to see things clearly. Because again, when you have not let those things off your chest, that's what contributes to the emotional reaction. That's what contributes to blurring your vision of the situation and not understanding what needs to happen next. So this is a great opportunity to make sure, and we're not saying at the moment whether this will lead to you entertaining him and letting him back in or keeping the door shut ultimately. It's just that you need to see this as a chance to, okay, let me make sure I spoke my piece. Let me make sure I get everything out of my system and release all these things from my spirit. This will help you immensely in moving forward in whatever direction you need to go in. Now, the next thing to do, if he comes back to you, is ask yourself, is this fixable and is this worth it? So let's start with, is this worth it? Quick story. I know a woman and she was dealing with a guy. They were dating. And at that time, he was pursuing her hard. But she was resistant due to family and friends. And if I'm going to be completely honest, they felt like he was not at her level. They felt like he wasn't good enough, even though out of her own mouth, she felt there was a connection there. She was into the guy, but she was worried about his status and if this was really a right fit, so on and so forth. And so because of these hesitations and the family and friends pressuring her, she would not embrace this man fully. So eventually he gets to a point where he stops, all right? He's no longer pursuing her. I want to say maybe a year or so later. Now, she's hurt by this. Let me throw that out there. She's hurt by the fact that he now gives up the pursuit, even though, yes, she was not fully embracing him, which was wrong. I won't get all into that right now, but it was not fair for her to continuously reject them and then be mad at him that he finally gave up. He couldn't take it anymore. Because whether a man loves you or not, there's only so much he can take. I would argue when he does love you, he has less pain tolerance, so to speak. I think there's this misconception that, well, if he loves you or that person loves you, they're going to keep trying. No, a lot of times the person who doesn't love you, who just has an unhealthy attachment to you, they have the energy to keep trying no matter what, because your rejection does not hurt them to the core. They are not as affected by it in a way that deters them from keep trying. But imagine you as a woman, if you love the man and you're trying to be in his life and he keeps rejecting you, it will hurt you so much that you will get to a point where you can't keep putting yourself out there. Because it's just, again, it's more devastating than the person that you aren't really into like that. So anyways, getting back to the story, he finally gave up his pursuit. Years pass, he comes back into her life. So now here's the thing. Her emotional reaction leads her to rejecting him again. Because her emotion said, you hurt me when you left me the first time. Even though, again, it wasn't a fair situation. But this is how she processed it. And those emotions did not allow her to see the fact that, one, she didn't get everything off her chest, as we mentioned. Two, this was something that was worth pursuing. This was a situation where, yes, it would be worth it. And yes, it actually is fixable. All right. But again, emotions dictated her actions and it went left again and it didn't work out. So this is why it's so important for you to understand the need to take a step back, take a deep breath before you just react to things. But getting back to the point that I made on this one is, again, evaluate, is it worth it? And understand that if there was genuine love there, if this was a man that, okay, maybe there were mistakes made, maybe there was misunderstanding, maybe there was miscommunication, but those things are fixable, all right? Now, if it's not worth it, if it's a guy that you recognize, okay, no, there was no connection there. There was no real love there. It was unhealthy from the beginning. You always knew he was the wrong guy, so on and so forth. Or he's coming back and he's not even coming back on some being serious. He's coming back still playing games. He's coming back not showing any growth. Then, of course, that's something that we don't entertain. I would still want you to get things off your chest, but you don't need to push things any further. But now let's break this down a little bit more. So let's get back to, let's talk about the fact that you looked at the situation and you determined it is worth it and it is fixable. So there's some things I want you to consider now if that is what's being determined. So the first thing, if we've determined that this is worth it and fixable. And let me also say this, because I feel like I'm hearing some of y'all right now in my spirit. Just because it's scary doesn't mean it's not worth it. Just because it seems difficult doesn't mean it's not worth it. All right. When I say something is worth it, I mean that there's genuine love and connection there. I mean that this is a guy who is willing to put forth the correct effort. This is a man who, again, he may have made mistakes, but he is willing to address and correct them. This is what I mean by it is worth it. This is a love worth pursuing. All right. But I know that sometimes, because it can feel very scary, because it can seem very difficult, because of all the outside noise, that has been added to the situation that can cause you to view it as not worth it. Do not let that fool you and throw you off track. All right. So going back to, we've determined that this is worth it and this is fixable. So number one, be open-minded and discuss all your concerns. So again, there's nothing wrong with being scared. There's nothing wrong with you saying, well, how could I really be sure I'm making the right decision by determining this guy is worth it and we can actually move forward? That's fine. That's understandable. Discuss those things. You know, the thing that sabotages and destroys potential relationships, whether in these dynamics or just starting off fresh, is the confusion. The confusion that comes from a lack of communication and a lack of understanding how the other person is feeling, all right? And when we have that confusion creates chaos. And that chaos creates more fear, insecurity, and toxic energy that now throws everything off. So it's important that if we're attempting to move forward, reconcile, work things out, whatever, that we be honest and forthcoming about how we feel, what fears do we have? Talk it out. Put it out there. What are the concerns? If the concern is, well, how can I know I can trust you again after you did such and such? Say that. Let's discuss that. Because again, if he is serious and he is a man that's worth it, he's going to be willing to have those discussions. Because I always say the man who loves you wants to bring you clarity and peace. The ones who don't will bring you confusion and chaos or stress. All right. So put everything out there, but be open-minded. Don't project negativity onto the situation. Don't do things like, well, he'll never go for this, or he'll never do this, or he'll never be okay with that. Don't do that. If that's the case, let him show that that's accurate. Let him show you if he's going to prove you right in those negative things or prove you wrong and do the right thing. But give him the opportunity by discussing it and putting it out there, because that's what's going to be needed if there's going to be a healthy step forward in making things work. The next thing to also, again, really focus in on, if you're determining that this is worth it, and I said it once, but I'll say it again, is there a real connection there? Listen, I'm not going to sit here and push people to try to make things work with someone that they have no connection with, because to me, that's very pointless. But I will encourage and push people to do it when there is a connection. And now some of you may say, well, if there was a connection, how do we even end up in this situation where he has to come back? How do we even end up where we have to reconcile? Listen, I wish I could give y'all all the stories of people who had connection and ran from each other, or sabotage, or somehow, fear, hurt, whatever, lack of healing got in the way of two people who had a connection being together. And this is why I firmly believe in right person, wrong time. Because there are a lot of situations where you meet someone, and specifically here, you might meet a man, he is that guy. But unfortunately, you guys met at a time where you weren't truly emotionally ready to handle the level of vulnerability that connection requires, or to handle the level of maturity a successful relationship requires. And so now things go left, not because you guys aren't good for each other, aren't right for each other, but you guys it was the wrong time. And now, again, I always hear y'all in my spirit. Some of y'all always say, well, if it was the wrong time, how could he be right? Why would God even let this person come into my life? Listen. Just because someone came into your life doesn't mean you were supposed to move forward with them at that time. See, the reality is that we move forward into these relationships because of what we want to do. We don't allow ourselves to process the proper timing of things a lot of times, because we're caught up in our draw to this person, our love for them, our desire for them, our connection with them. That can blind us from taking a step back and say, okay, maybe we have this thing here, right? But it's not time for us to really move forward in a romantic relationship. So when you say, why would God bring this person into my life? I will say, but did God tell you to go be with them at that time? Did God tell you to get romantically involved at that time? If not, then we can't put that on God. All right. But regardless, it's just that things get thrown off. And it can happen. So going back to the point, connection is the key. I'm a firm believer in that. And that's why I'm not going to dismiss the possibility that sometimes the man who comes back is the man you have a real connection with and is a man that you can have a great relationship with. Granted, many who will come back never belonged in your life and don't need to be entertained at all. And we'll go over some extra points in regards to that. But do not rule out the man who you have a real connection with. And then there's so much we can continue to talk about with this, but one more point I want to make in regards to you determining he's worth it and it's fixable is be willing to heal and don't be afraid to let him back in. And reality is that goes hand in hand. Like I said, these situations can be very scary. And many times we shut people out not because there wasn't a connection, not because they're not right for us, but because we're too scared to deal with the possibilities of being hurt again, moving forward, being disappointed, so on and so forth. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, timing is important. And just because someone came back right now still doesn't mean it's the right time right now. You could require more time. And that's why it's so important to make the time to heal. Now, I would love for you to have already healed by the time this person, if he is right for you, comes back into your life. But if you haven't, and now the opportunity presents itself, don't think you can skip that step and make it work with this man. Don't think, okay, well, here's a second chance. I do love him. There is a connection. Let's just move forward. No, because if you don't heal, then you're going to find yourself back at square one. You're going to struggle in making this work. Connection cannot be destroyed, but a lot of trash can be thrown on top of it. All right. You can muddy the waters, so to speak, and make it difficult to maintain and sustain that relationship successfully. So you've got to be careful and make sure you do your part, not just for the sake of the potential relationship, but for you and your overall quality of life, and heal. And then with that healing, not be afraid to let him back in. And this is where, again, you got to trust that intuition. You got to trust your spirit. You got to talk to God. You got to be vocal and honest about your fears so you guys can walk through the fears together. You got to put it all out on the table because that's the only way to make it work. I know this sounds like a lot and this is heavy for those of you who may be facing this or who have faced this. But listen, I have to give you what's real, and this is what needs to happen. And again, I don't want to see people who belong together not being able to successfully make it happen because of all the lack of healing, fears, and other issues that throw things off track. But now let's pivot, because I said, I had to give you the possibility of him being the right guy. But let's just say he's the wrong guy. He's always been the wrong guy. All right. And so now we understand this is not a fixable situation, and this damn sure ain't worth it. All right. So here are some things you need to remember if that has been determined. First thing is, don't let loneliness get the best of you. Hell, don't let loneliness or boredom, okay, get the best of you. Because a lot of times we may entertain people when we shouldn't because we got nothing better going on at the moment. We're a little bored. We want some companionship. Again, lonely, whatever. Maybe even you're feeling a little horny. Let's keep it real, all right? You may have some needs that you want met and this opportunity presents itself, but please do not allow those things to cause you to run back into the arms of someone who's only going to make you miserable, all right? Who's only going to make situation worse, who's going to now create a deeper, unhealthy attachment with this person because they don't belong. So once you understand, and this is why, again, you've got to take that step back. In step one, we said don't react emotionally because you got to give yourself a chance to process. Is this worth it? Is this not? What do I need to do here? Why is this current? What's the opportunity that this is presenting to me? All right. And once we understand he ain't for you, do not let that loneliness, boredom, or horniness get you caught up and in the wrong situation. The next thing to consider or the next thing to do in this regard is release and release. Now, what do I mean by release and release? This is kind of just reiterating what I said earlier. You still want to get things off your chest. Again, I think one of the big mistakes people make is that because you determine this person is not worth your time, you think there's no point in saying or expressing yourself fully. And the problem is that if you're truly at peace, and however you've accomplished this, cool, right? But if you know that there's toxic energy that lingers in you, hurt, disappointment, betrayal, resentment, animosity, any of those things, all right? If you know there was things you wish you would have said, let it all out. Because again, to not release those things will cause you to become attached to the situation. And by becoming attached to the situation, you become attached to the person. And this can wreak a lot of havoc. So you've got to still be willing to make sure you have fully released even when he's the wrong guy. But as I said earlier, release and release. So release your feelings and your words and all that you need to express, and then release his ass. Okay? That's it. Like, you gotta let him go. And in letting him go, which brings me to the next point for this, is let him go and shut all the doors. All right? I see a lot of women say, well, I let him go, but he won't let me go. He keeps coming back. Because you're allowing him to walk through the door. Yes, he may be coming to the door, knocking the hell out of it, screaming out loud, trying to get through, and you get worn down, beat down emotionally to where you finally let that door crack open, and he pushes his way all the way through. You can't even let him have a dim, what's the word? You can't let him have any opening whatsoever, all right? You've got to erase the numbers, block the phone if you got to, eliminate all the social media. You got to remove anything that allows this man an opportunity to come back into your life and cause problems. You got to remove anything that's going to cause you to stumble and make the wrong decision. Listen, now, if you're at a place where you can release and you can still be on social media and it doesn't faze you, okay, cool. It's all about recognizing what are your weaknesses or what are the problematic areas for you that don't allow you to stay on course and do what's truly best. Eliminate those things, shut those doors. Like I said, release him, release your feelings, release him, and then shut all those doors so you don't get caught back up in that situation. Now let's get back to kind of the main overarching points, all right? So I gave you some earlier, but I got a few more I want to mention. When this man comes back, do not let friends and family dictate your decisions. So we talked about your emotions, and that includes your fears and all these different things. But I've seen so many people determine whether they're going to entertain someone or not based off of family and friends' unhealthy influence. Though their input may have been well-intentioned, it can create more problems. And I've seen it happen both ways. I've seen some situations where the guy should not have been let back in. But, you know, maybe your family member really liked him. Like, oh, just give him another chance. Oh, you know, maybe it'll be better this time. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Like they try to find some way to convince you or guilt you into giving this man another opportunity he should not get. On the flip side, I've seen situations where you should be entertaining this man, but no, forget him. They're still holding on to maybe something. What's coming to me right now is like a lot of times as a human being or as a woman, we tell friends and family a lot of negative situations, but we don't give them the full picture of the positive ones. So when that person re-enters into your life, or even while they're in your life, the outside members, the family and friends, may have a more skewed negative perception than positive one because we don't always share the highlights. But we'll share a lot of low, you know, when we're pissed off and we're feeling some kind of way, we might express those. And you got to be mindful of that. If you know you gave them way more ammunition of negative than positive, how can we expect them to give you a fair and balanced opinion? How can we expect them to give you insight and guidance without bias in that situation? And there naturally may already be bias because they're family members, they love you. And again, they may have good intentions, not to mention that their bias can also come from their own personal experiences. Many people project themselves into the situation, and basically because, well, I wouldn't deal with this, they're going to tell you not to, but they're not you. And it's not the same thing. So all in all, just be careful, because I've seen family and friends sway people in the wrong direction. You got to make sure you got to figure this out in a better way. All right. And I'm going to give you some things to consider when trying to figure it out without using friends and family. If you want to go to a professional, that's cool, because at least with a professional, there's an unbiased opinion. They're able to now get a more full picture of the relationship and the situation, rather than just going off of the bad stuff that they heard throughout the times. All right. I think you'll have a better chance of getting more accurate, healthy guidance by going to a counselor or a coach. And it's not that friends and family are incapable of giving good advice. It's just you have to be careful with that. All right. So be careful letting them dictate your decisions. The other thing to do when he comes back, and I mentioned this earlier, so this is going to be a quick point. Do not let fear guide you. Again, even if this person is not for you and the door needs to be shut, that decision needs to be made through an understanding and a peace with the situation, rather than a fear of the situation. All right. We can come to the same conclusion by processing things properly, by, again, getting things off our chest, by healing that. And to me, that's the healthier way to go about it, because if you allow fear to dictate, fear is something that can sway you in a lot of different directions, can blind you and cause you not to see things properly, can also cause you to miss maybe the deeper purpose of this situation right now. Again, sometimes these things happen because there's a greater purpose we don't understand at the moment. All right. And if we don't allow ourselves to fully go deeper within ourselves and in our spirit to gain guidance, we may miss the mark. And we may find ourselves continuing in a negative cycle because we're not learning the lesson we need to learn. So be careful to allow fear to overcome you. Find peace, find guidance through your spirit, through God, in order to make the right decisions. The next thing I'll mention, and we got one more after this, but the next thing is, don't make the same mistake twice. All right. What I mean by that, I don't mean you got with him the first time, don't get with him again. Because again, we have to consider all the possible things that I laid out for you. When I say don't make the same mistake twice, I mean whatever led to there being an issue the first time around. Whether the issue was letting him in to begin with, or the issue was you guys falling apart due to misunderstandings and miscommunication, let's learn from that. So basically, if you know you only entertained this man because you were lonely, don't do it again. Remind yourself that was the only reason why it happened the first time. Let me make sure I guard myself against that issue. If we know that miscommunication led to the breakup, all right, well, let's make sure we don't miscommunicate again. Let's make sure we do a better job. Let's learn from the first go round. Again, the lessons may be to strengthen your position in shutting him out completely and not letting him back in, or the lessons may be to allow you to grow closer and stronger with him, or the lessons may be what you need so that you can have a better relationship with somebody else. All right. But be open to the lessons and ensure that you don't make the same mistake again. All right. And so now we got the last point I got to give you. But before I give it to you, I meant to mention this earlier. Get your copy of the book, He's Lying, Sis. Now, me promoting this right now doesn't mean that the man who comes back is always lying, okay? I'm just mentioning it because he might be lying. He might be full of crap. And so this is going to help you and guide you through a lot of situations where lies are being told and how to properly handle it. Best-selling book. Click the link in the description or in the comment section below. But the last point for me to make, and in my personal opinion and in my with my value system and my beliefs, this is the most important thing, is pray and talk to God. Now, again, I pretty much mentioned it throughout this video, but I got to drive the point home one more time. You got to make sure that, again, if you're a believer, because if you're not a believer, of course, this doesn't apply. And I understand, I'm not forcing this on you. You take the meat, And is that how you say it? Take the meat, spit out the bones, whatever. All right, just take what works for you and leave the rest. But for those of you who are believers, then it is important. It's extremely important that you talk to God, that you pray, that you don't make these decisions on your own as far as what to do, or you don't let your friends and family, or you don't let your pastor, or whoever. All right, they are not God. Let God guide you in this situation. So you've heard me say it before, not just pray, but if you're not getting an answer clearly, go on a fast. Fasting will help you draw closer to your spirit, draw closer to God. It will allow you to gain clarity to make sure that you navigate the situation the best way possible. Because again, as I mentioned from the beginning, I think there is this unhealthy perspective that once an X, always an X. And that simply isn't always true. Yes, in most cases is it true? Absolutely, but not always. And I felt like I had to lay this out because I don't want to see the right people missing the opportunity to be together. I don't want to see the right people letting fear and outside influences who don't understand the situation properly to pull them apart and get in the way of real love. There are people who it failed the first time. They fell apart for a few years or however many years. They've come back and now they're having the most amazing relationship. 10 years strong, 20 years strong. I mean, I got stories for days. And one day I hope I can start interviewing some of these people so that you guys understand that yes, it can happen. But you got to make sure you take the right approach and you got to make sure that you heal so that you will be ready for real love when it comes your way. Hey, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to check this one out right here, and I'll see you there. I pray you receive the man who wants to love you, not just use you. And the reality is that there is a man out there for you. There is a man who wants to cherish you, honor you, and is going to fall deep